It's time once again for another cold front.
Today we'll be talking about climate change.
From why it is occurring to what we can do to help, we're showing you multiple viewpoints about the issue.
The cold front starts right now.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Cold Front. I'm Sabrina Bates. Climate change is a major topic, but it can be also very controversial. Before we delve into what people think about the issue, meteorologist Joie Bettenhausen is at the wall to discuss the facts of what really is climate change and why it occurs. Joie?
So first we're going to talk about the differences between global warming and climate change. Now global warming is on a bigger spectrum. We have the greenhouse gases trapping the sun's energy. Now that allows the temperatures to increase above average than what we're used to seeing. Now that, again, follows the whole planet and that temperature increasing. Now climate change is a bit different. It involves temperature, humidity, cloudiness, and precipitation. So are we going to get snow? Are we going to get rain? How much rain? Is it going to be more of like a drought season? Or are we going to get very heavy rains in very localized areas? Now the differences between these two, global warming again is on the global large spectrum versus climate change is very localized. You see the impacts in your own neighborhood and those can be very different from maybe a state away. So let's talk about the climate, what causes climate change. First, you have the human-induced emissions. So these are your coal, oil, gas. You have your car emissions from factories, different machinery plants, things like that. Those emissions will then get trapped up in the atmosphere and can help contribute to climate change. A next one is deforestation. Now this is when you cut down all the trees in the surrounding neighborhoods, areas, forest preserves. Now when I know plants, they soak up the CO2 that we release when we talk, and we breathe in that oxygen. Well, you cut those plants and trees down, that's more CO2 in our atmosphere. And finally, agricultural practices, the way we till the grounds or the way we gather plants, natural resources, crops, things like that, that can really affect climate change. Now, something that's very popular is the cherry blossom blooming in DC. Now, we could see this actually happen a lot sooner than what's expected. So from 1931 through 1960, we usually saw those blossomings happening around April 6th, but now closer to our time, it's happening around April 1st. Now that's a whole 5 days earlier. You might think, oh, that's not a lot, but look at this future trend here. Again, we said it might happen around April 1st. It's projected from 2070 to 2100 that it could happen anywhere from March 4th through March 10th. That's a whole month earlier. And you know, in March we could get frost and snow and things like that. So those cherry blossoms could be susceptible to damage because of that. Now another huge topic is the billion-dollar disasters, and especially here in the US. Look, these numbers don't lie. Starting in 1980, we maybe had 5 or maybe less or so, but I'm gonna walk over here so you can see. Look at 2017, look at how high it is, up to 15, and we're just gonna see that trend continue. Now something we did see, this is just looking at 2017 alone and all the billion-dollar disasters that came with that. So you saw droughts, floods. I remember those fires in California. You had freeze warnings, different tornadoes, and if anybody could remember those 3 hurricanes that really impacted the United States. So again, we have a lot going on here. Now, something that Climate Central had is where you could type in your city and see how much the temperatures will increase for your area. Now, they didn't have Valparaiso, so I did Chicago. And look, Chicago is looking to be about 27 degrees Celsius higher than what it normally is like. And then they compared it with Juarez, Mexico. Now you think Mexico, it's farther from us, it's very warm, it's very hot, very muggy sometimes there. Now if they're showing us that we could be like Mexico in their climate, now that definitely is something that we should take into consideration. Sabrina, back to you.
Thanks, Joy. For a better understanding of the science behind climate change, we sat down with climate specialist Dr. Craig Clark. Let's take a look.
Well, climate change is complex, but it describes the ongoing climate change over different time periods. The modern issue of climate change involves the effects of humans and increased carbon dioxide on the climate system over long periods of time. It has changed a lot. We've seen unprecedented warming during that time. All of the top 10 warmest years in the instrumental record have all happened during that time. So at the same time, the data has gotten much more compelling, especially in the Arctic, of warming and sea ice losses and other things. And at the same time, numerical models are run at much higher resolution, so we have much greater confidence in what they're showing us with regard to future warming. Well, it gets complicated. The sort of the simplest thing in some ways is just the temperature warming, more at high latitudes and over land masses than over oceans and in tropical latitudes. People are particularly interested in other impacts like precipitation and high impact dramatic weather events. But depending on the event and the region, those things are much more challenging to assess than the direct temperature impacts. I hope so. I'm not sure that they are, but I hope so.
News meteorologist John Hammersmith also followed up with Dr. Craig Clark about climate change and asked the Valparaiso University baseball team what climate change means to them.
Where's that good old global warming that everyone's talking about? If all this snows here, then is global warming really a thing?
Global warming can't be dismissed by record-breaking snowfalls, ice, and sub-zero temperatures. This is why I talked to Dr. Craig Clark, Associate Professor of Meteorology at Valparaiso University, to dig deeper into what is really happening.
Over time, warming is ongoing. When we look at global temperature anomalies for a given month or a given year, we're always, within the warmest handful of years on the global setting. Locally, it can be a lot different than that because weather is dominant for smaller scales. But if you look on a given month, much more of the northern hemisphere or the globe is warmer than average than colder than average. So it's hard for people to separate weather from climate because what they experience on a day-to-day variation is weather. But when you look kind of on large scales and across the globe, you really see it.
So what's on the mind of VU students when asked what they think about global warming and climate change?
I'm going to say the heat, polar bears, and glaciers.
Problematic, scary, and extreme temperatures.
Heat, melting, and emissions.
People in the community think about the livelihood of the polar bears, the scorching, record-breaking heat of summer, and melting ice caps, which are raising sea levels across the globe. These events, plus many more, are all products of the changing climate.
We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're learning about different perspectives on climate change.
Plus, we'll discuss the national and local impact it has on us.
We'll be right back.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
What is passion? At Valpo, it's something that pours out of us uncontrollably. It's a late night shot of caffeine, cramming for finals, a jam session with friends. It sees deep into space, turns big stuff into small potatoes, floats boats, and floods the senses. Passion is alive, it has a heartbeat, and it lives in you. How do we know? Because at Valpo, passion is who we are.
Welcome back to the Cold Front.
Many people seem to be divided about the issue of climate change. Some even define climate change differently depending on where they grew up.
Well, fellow staffers Blake Harms and Andrew Bottom asked students in the union what their opinions are on the matter. Let's watch.
there's definitely a lot of problems going on with the climate. We know about global warming is a big thing, but I also think it ties into the amount of pollution that we have as well in the world, which is obviously growing and it's becoming a problem.
I guess something heavy just happening to the environment, like longer winters, longer summers, things like that.
I think we're definitely speeding up that process. So, for example, something really common, people use a lot of those facial scrubs, right? They contain microbeads, so that's micro little pieces of plastic that are in our water, and they're still produced. I use them myself, and I stopped once I found out about how this is polluting a lot of those organisms in the ocean and how that's changing our aquatic life cycle, basically.
I don't want to say we play a massive factor just because we got things like volcanoes and all that stuff. We're definitely contributing, but I don't think we're a massive factor. Oh, it's definitely something we need to be concerned about, at least even just looking into, because things are getting worse, and it's our planet.
I think we should be really concerned. I mean, I just finished a natural science course, and so we learned about how the snow caps are melting. We learned about pollution with the water. It's polluting a lot of our food, so there's the sustainability piece of it. A lot of fish has a lot of mercury in it. We're seeing also more children, so mothers who consume a lot of fish, their children are born with a lot of problems due to the high mercury levels in the water, so that's also a big problem.
I think at this point, all we can do is just reduce what we're doing, and hopefully it'll come out better in the long run.
Earlier this week, we sat down with representatives from both college Democrats and college Republicans to provide insight on each party's viewpoints on the subject and some programs that they support.
All right, my name is Julian Garner, and I'm the president of College Democrats here at Valparaiso University, and I'm an RA in Beacon Hall. I'm a junior political science major.
So my name is Carlos Cabaya. I am the current vice chairman of the College Republicans group on campus.
It is something that needs all of the attention that we could possibly give it at the moment. Obviously climate change, global warming is an issue that we need to address, but we can't tackle it head first unless we have all the support and we come together regardless of party affiliations to take on this issue. In the words of Dr. King, there is such a thing as being too late, and if we continue to ignore climate change and we refuse to recognize it as a serious threat to humanity, it might eventually become too late for us.
Well, the Republicans are across a range of views. You could find people who are complete climate change deniers, or some people where their views are more that they don't believe that environmental policy is really going to help with climate change. Personally, I align more with those who think that environmental policy is not going to help climate change. I mean, there are 7 billion people in the planet, and trying to get everyone to get together and try to combat climate change is a very hard endeavor to make.
There are a variety of initiatives or programs that are currently, taking place, or various statewide programs that are being implemented to take on climate change head first. For instance, I know California recently passed Assembly Bill 32. This is the Global Warming Solution Act of 2006, which mandates the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020 in California. So that's just one initiative that one state is taking. There are a variety of different programs that are doing great jobs. I know the National Oceanic Administration is taking on climate change head first to take on the issue of rising sea levels.
Some of the programs that should be implemented are things that would help out with carbon emissions and stuff like that. I think we should always recycle. That's always going to help out the environment. We always need more trees in the world.
Yes, I do trust climate scientists. I know a lot of conservatives oftentimes say, or they start their debate with, oh, well, I'm not a scientist, but these are my thoughts on climate change or global warming. But I think we need to start listening to the scientists and the researchers who dedicate their entire lives to researching the data that supports the notion of climate change being a real issue that we need to address. So yes, I do support them.
I think we should trust climate scientists. I mean, that's their jobs as people who deal with science, chemists, physicists, meteorologists like yourself. Climate scientists are people who are doing their jobs correctly.
I believe that each play a pretty significant role in the overall change in the climate of the Earth. However, I do think that humanity plays a larger role, in a sense, in these changing climates and the rise of temperature. But yes, I think both play a pretty significant role, but I do think that us as humans are having a more serious impact on the Earth.
This could go both ways. Both the public and the natural cycles of the planet are both to blame. It's obvious that the public is to blame for climate change, the things that we do on this planet. You know, a lot of people litter, a lot of people waste electricity, stuff like that, waste water. That's to blame for climate change. And another reason is the Earth's natural cycles. You know, we've had climate changes before where we've had ice ages and the lunar cycles and stuff like that. So it could go both ways. It's both the public's fault and both the planet's natural cycles.
Another commercial break coming up, but when we come back, we will be talking about the local impact of climate change.
And later, we will be looking at what we can do to help the climate.
We'll be right back.
Well, I think that's all we need. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Okay, this is it. Just shake his hand and walk out with your head held high. Don't mess this up. Thank you. Nailed it. Don't let a bad handshake get in the way of getting the job you want. Find out more at the Career Center.
Thanks for sticking with us. We know that everyone has their own opinion about climate change, but there's one thing that we can't disagree on. That's the effects it has on our planet.
Scientists have observed some of these effects in our environment. Loss of sea ice, accelerated sea level rise, more intense heat waves, to name a few, are prominent across the world.
So let's talk about these effects that are caused by climate change.
Yes.
We have this article here from NASA, from the Global Climate Change Center there, talking about the vital signs of the planet and all the effects about it. We're going to go through this so you guys know that we're not making up these effects, that these are the actual facts about climate change that are going on across our planet.
Yeah, do you want to start it off?
Yeah, we're going to start off with temperatures continuing to rise. This is a common fact that we just know about climate change because there's that whole connotation of global warming. You talked about that already briefly.
Exactly.
But global warming is just a part of that. We know temperatures are going to rise. That's just one bit about the effects of climate change.
Right. So next, we're going to be talking about the frost-free season. So I know this has to do a lot with agriculture. Agriculture is huge, especially in the Midwest. It's how we get most of our food, especially for animals and things like that. And without a frost-free season, sure, you'll be able to grow more foods and things like that, but the plants will really wear out in terms of all that drought and drier air, and you know, they won't really have that chance to really soak up that precipitation.
Right, and talking about precipitation, the next topic is the changes in the precipitation patterns. Now remember, this isn't just the US, this is globally these things are going on. So it's not just those of us in the Midwest or the Southeast or the Northwest. These are people who are even in Africa, Europe, Asia. Everyone's being affected by this. So the average precipitation in general has continued to increase. There's more winter and spring precipitation projected for the northern U.S., now we're talking about the U.S., and less for the southwest over this country, which means there's going to be more rain and snow in the states that already get a ton of rain and snow, and less in the areas that are pretty much deserts already.
And just to bounce off with that, you know, we saw 3 bomb cyclones just in the span of 2 weeks.
Right.
So that's already showing you we really have those intense storms.
Definitely.
So next we're going to talk about more droughts and heat waves, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to read this here from the article. Droughts in the Southwest and heat waves are everywhere are projected to become more intense, and cold waves less intense everywhere. So think about it, those drought seasons that we've had even in the West, and you know, having to cut off water supply, really regulate that, people are going to have to do that a lot more, especially around the country.
Right, and we know that the southern part of the U.S. and parts of the Great Plains get droughts as it is.
Yeah.
But I know Oklahoma this year, you have the eastern part of the state that had excess amount of water, but the western part near the Panhandle barely had anything. So there's such a sharp gradient of the drought in areas that really shouldn't be that dry.
Exactly, and think about the river systems and things like that. Those will definitely shrink and probably cause issues for traveling and trade and stuff like that.
Especially because there's a lot of reservoirs in the Great Plains as well. All right, so the next topic we're talking about definitely is a global issue. Hurricanes will become stronger and more intense. I'm also going to read a sentence off of this article. The intensity, frequency, and duration of North Atlantic hurricanes, as well as the frequency of the strongest hurricanes, which are Category 4s and Category 5s, have all increased since the early 1980s. So just in the span of 30 years, these hurricanes have gotten stronger. You could even look at that over the past year where we've had so many major hurricanes even just brush against the U.S. coast or hit islands that are right near it as well.
Exactly. Like the last hurricane I remember that was really strong was Sandy and then Katrina, but there were so many years in between those versus we had those 3 major ones this year.
Right. We had Hurricane Matthew, all of these hurricanes.
Yeah. Super crazy. One thing that everyone realizes, especially with climate change, is sea level rise. Now that's definitely a huge topic. So I'm going to read a sentence off of here. It says, global sea level has risen by about 8 inches since reliable record keeping began in 1880.
That's crazy.
That's a lot. Now a lot of you might think, okay, 8 inches over so many years, it's not really a lot, but if you think about it, a lot of those coastal areas, that affects homes, wildlife, animals, plants, all of that.
Right.
And those, if this trend keeps continuing, that could just wipe out all of that.
Especially when some people live right at sea level at 0 feet. You have that increase in that sea level. Parts of their land is destroyed. I know a lot of those coastal homes are risen a little bit because built up, but still think about the rest of the area around it.
It's insane to believe.
It really is. And one of the last things is Arctic is likely to become ice-free. Again, that's a common thing that we keep hearing. You hear the polar bears are in danger. You hear all of the animals near the Arctic. They're losing their homes because the ice is melting. Now, it's just a common, I guess, idea people get with climate change, but it's real. It's not something we want to joke about or anything like that. It's a real issue that's going to continue throughout the next century.
Right. Now let's focus on some regional effects.
Yeah, so now we're going to focus on just the U.S. because we just went over global issues that are occurring right now.
Yeah, but this maybe will bring a little bit more perspective to us happening closer to home.
Right, so these impacts are visible throughout the U.S. and in these regions, and this has been discovered by the 3rd National Climate Assessment Report. This was released by the U.S. Global Change Research Program. So this is a study that was done. It's not just local people observing what's going on, just
climate scientists.
Climate scientists, so this is real. So first, the Northeast. Regional effects for this area, you have heat waves, you have heavy downpours, sea level rises. All this is going to affect the infrastructure of the area, fishing companies, ecosystems, all of the cities there. You're looking at the Northeast coast. That's a very populated area.
It really is, especially for shipping and travel and trade and all of that.
Right, exactly. And then we have the Northwest, so shifting to the other side of the U.S. This has to do with the changing in the timing of the stream flow, reducing water supplies for their demands, because they have a lot of fishing up there too. They have a lot of water-related things going on. So when you have your water levels impacted, it's really going to change how they live there.
Right, so now we're going to focus on the southeast. So the sea level rise poses widespread and continuing threats to the region's economy and environment, and extreme heat will affect health, energy, agriculture, and more. You think about the southeast, you know, that's Florida. That's a very hot spot for vacationers.
Very humid too.
Very humid, so just imagine that getting worse. I can't even fathom that, right now.
Right.
No. And then finally, we're going to focus on the Midwest here, so back home. So you can have extreme heat, heavy downpours, and flooding that will affect infrastructure, health, agriculture, forestry, transportation, air and water quality. So if you just think about that, that will just affect, honestly, how we go about our day-to-day lives.
Right. And you know, it's really crazy, the fact that we see all this happening right now. If you look at little things, we had a ton of flooding here in the Midwest, but I mean, it's everywhere. It keeps continuing to happen.
Welcome back to the Cold Front.
Throughout this episode, we have shown different viewpoints on climate change and delivered the data from climate scientists.
Have you ever wondered what you could do on campus to make a difference? Well, we are here with a representative from Earthtones, an environmental group on campus who are dedicated to the principles of conservation, recycling, and environmentalism. So here with us today, we have Katie Bassett. Katie, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like what's your major, what are you involved in on campus, things like that?
Sure. So I'm a mechanical engineer on campus, and I'm involved with obviously Earthtones and then robotics and Society of Women Engineers.
Okay, that's awesome. Do you have a position in Earthtones?
I'm the president of Earthtones right now.
Oh, wow.
Great. So what made you interested in joining Earthtones?
I've been excited about environmentalism and sustainability since I took AP Environmental Science in high school, and that's what prompted me to get into the organization.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, have you guys done anything on campus, like any programs or projects you've done?
So right now we have a display outside of the cafe that talks about what can and can't be recycled on campus. It's actually surprising how much can't be recycled, but it's still better to throw it in the trash than in the recycling. So that's one thing that we're doing. And then we did a food waste campaign last year to promote using your food and not letting it go bad. And we've done a few dorm events as well.
Okay, do you notice that people want to participate in your events, or at least trying to, I guess, help the environment at all?
Yeah, among the student body, there's absolutely a lot of support for environmentalism. It's just a lot of times people don't have time in their schedule or they don't know how to get involved.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting to hear. You know, a lot of times you hear people like, oh, it's better just to throw it on the ground. You know, they don't have time to really do that in their time, but it's really nice to see that people, especially on Valpo's campus, really want to get involved with that. Do you have any events coming up?
Yes, so one thing that we're working on right now that's extremely exciting is we're going to have the first annual Earthtones Environmental Conference on campus.
Oh, wow.
So that's April 29th, and it will be in the ballrooms, and it's going to be open to all students and faculty and community members, and there's no cost. It's just the goal of spreading ideas and allowing people to connect with each other around the ideas of sustainability.
Okay, and that's right around Earth Day, too.
Yeah.
So it kind of works hand in hand there, right?
Yes, it's perfect. It's a week after Earth Week and Earth Day.
That's great. I'm glad that people on campus are going to be able to get more involved, at least.
Exactly.
And can you just give us an idea of what your mission statement is for Earthtones before we wrap everything up?
Sure. So we are just a student organization that's wanting to promote sustainability primarily through education and service. So that's what Earthtones is all about.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining
Yes,
us
thank
today.
you.
We loved
Absolutely.
learning about Earthtones, and I hope a lot of people on campus come to your conference.
Yeah,
We'll be
thank you,
sure to
guys.
get there.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. That just about does it for another episode of The Cold Front. If you want to be a part of one of our future shows, please email us at vutv.weather@valpo.edu.
Our next episode is about space weather and the factors associated with it. Be sure to watch the next cold front on April 5th.
Also, stay up to date on the latest news here on campus and around the country by following VUTV on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm Sabrina.
And I'm Joy. Have a great week, Valpo.